If you walk through Jerusalem today, you'll see what feels familiar. The timeless stone walls, the bustling markets, and prayers carried softly on the wind. But if you pause and look a little closer, something new, something unexpected comes into view. Signs, bold, unapologetic signs pointing the way, not to a hotel, not to a museum, not even to the buzzing souks of the old city, but to something far more stirring, the house of God. Now stop and think. Why would such words suddenly appear across one of the most disputed and sacred stretches of land on earth? Why here in Jerusalem, a city where every stone has ignited battles and every prayer is heavy with centuries of longing? For some, these signs are nothing more than the work of activists, a fringe movement intent on sparking outrage. But for others, these markers aren't random or careless graffiti. They are prophetic signals, public declarations that the long-awaited, long-feared rebuilding of the Jewish temple has stepped out of hushed whispers and private prayers and entered the very streets of the city. And that leaves us with a pressing question. Are we standing at the threshold of one of the most powerful fulfillments of biblical prophecy? Because history makes one thing clear. Every time a temple rose in Jerusalem, the world shifted. Empires collapsed, civilizations changed course, prophets proclaimed it, nations felt it, and the Bible promises another one is coming. Stay with me, because what we are about to uncover isn't just ancient history. It is living prophecy playing out before our very eyes. To grasp the weight of these signs, we need to look back. Jerusalem has always been the stage where history and prophecy meet. The first temple, built by King Solomon nearly 3,000 years ago, was unlike anything the world had ever seen. A house of gold, cedar, and glory, said to hold the very presence of God himself. But in 586 BC, the Babylonians stormed the city. Fire swallowed its courts, and the Ark of the Covenant disappeared into mystery. Centuries later, a second temple rose. At first modest, it was later expanded into a magnificent wonder by King Herod. This was the temple Jesus himself walked into, the place where he taught, where sacrifices were offered daily. But in AD 70, Roman legions descended. Stone by stone, it was torn apart, fulfilling his prophecy that not a single stone would remain upon another. And here's where history turns prophetic. The scriptures didn't end with destruction. Daniel spoke of a sanctuary yet to come. Paul in 2 Thessalonians warned of a man of lawlessness who would set himself up in God's temple. And John in Revelation measured a temple that has not yet been built, which leaves us with a sobering truth. The Bible insists another temple will rise. And history shows us that whenever the temple returns, the world is never the same. Now, with new signs boldly pointing the way, the question is no longer if prophecy speaks of a third temple, but whether we are standing right now at the very edge of its return. The question of the third temple is no longer just a matter of theology or abstract theory. In Jerusalem today, unmistakable signs have begun to appear, signs both literal and symbolic, that seem to point directly toward its possible return. And these signs are stirring something deep, not only in the hearts of the faithful, but also in the minds of skeptics who once dismissed prophecy as little more than myth. Let's start with something surprisingly ordinary: road signs. In recent years, visitors walking through Jerusalem's narrow streets have noticed new markers, not pointing to the old city's markets, not toward historic gates, but instead toward the house of the Lord. These signs don't direct tourists to a museum or pilgrims to an existing holy site. They point toward something that does not yet exist, the future temple of God. Some may shrug, saying it's nothing more than stickers or placards put up by a small group. That's true. The signs were likely printed by a fringe religious movement. But in Israel, symbols are never meaningless. Every stone, every ritual, every word carries enormous weight. And what begins as a symbolic gesture can slowly shift the public's mind in ways that alter history. These signs are not a random protest. They are reminders that for many, the temple is no longer just a distant dream. It is a living vision, bold enough to be proclaimed in public. This connects directly to ancient prophecy. Isaiah declared that in the last days, the mountain of the Lord's house would be raised above all other mountains, and nations would stream to it. Micah repeated the same vision, foretelling a time when people everywhere would say, "Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob." These prophecies don't describe obscurity. They point to a moment when the temple becomes visible, undeniable, and central to the entire world. The simple fact that signs now point toward a temple not yet built seems to echo that very expectation. The house of the Lord, according to Scripture, will be something no nation can ignore. And yet, the road signs are only the beginning. Perhaps the greater sign lies on the Temple Mount itself. For decades, the Mount, where both the first and second temples once stood, has been the most explosive flashpoint on earth. To Muslims, it is home to the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock. To Jews, it is the holiest place on earth. Yet for most of modern history, Jewish prayer there has been strictly forbidden by law and tightly enforced by police. For generations, any Jew who dared to bow, whisper a prayer, or even move lips silently risked arrest and immediate removal. The Mount was essentially off-limits, but that reality is shifting. In recent years, something unprecedented has begun to happen. Israeli leaders themselves, not just religious activists but elected government officials, have ascended the Mount and prayed openly. One of the most shocking moments came when Knesset member Itamar Ben-Gvir, accompanied by thousands, prayed on the Temple Mount without interruption. For the first time, the law did not silence him. Security forces did not drag him away. Instead, the prayer went forward. This was not just political theater. It was a turning point in the status of the Mount itself. What had long been seen as forbidden, untouchable ground is slowly becoming a contested, but increasingly normalized, place of Jewish prayer. Each time a leader prays there, the taboo weakens, and the idea of Jewish worship on the Mount grows stronger. And again, prophecy sheds light. Zechariah foretold that in the last days, Jerusalem would become a heavy stone for all peoples, a city that makes nations tremble because of the struggle surrounding it. That prophecy is visible in every headline about the Temple Mount. Every prayer offered there sends ripples across the globe. The debate over the Third Temple is no longer confined to sermons or abstract theology. In Jerusalem, the evidence is mounting, literal and symbolic signs pointing toward its possible return. And these signs are stirring controversy. Every political step on the Temple Mount sparks international outcry. Yet the trend continues. Slowly but surely, the Mount is opening to Jewish presence, moving closer to what prophecy described long ago. But the signs are not limited to the Temple Mount. Across Israel, another remarkable development is unfolding. Aliyah, the steady return of Jews from exile. Ezekiel foresaw this when he spoke of dry bones coming to life, a scattered nation reborn. In our lifetime, Jews from Russia, Ethiopia, America, and nations across the world have streamed back to their ancestral land. And with every wave of Aliyah, the dream of a restored temple grows more possible. The people needed to build it now live again in the land of their forefathers. Then there is archaeology. Beneath Jerusalem's ancient streets, tunnels cut through the bedrock near the Temple Mount. Archaeologists have uncovered stairways, ritual baths, and ruins from the time of the Second Temple. Each discovery is a reminder that this was no myth. It was reality. Pilgrims once walked these steps. Priests once purified themselves in these mikvehs. Worshippers once stood as the smoke of sacrifice rose to heaven. Once, skeptics claimed archaeology would disprove Scripture. But in Jerusalem, the opposite has happened. Shovel after shovel has only confirmed it. Stones cry out, testifying to the memory of a temple that once stood and perhaps hinting at one that may yet rise again. So when we talk about signs of the temple, we are not speaking of a single moment, but of a convergence. Road signs in the streets, public prayers on the Mount, migrations back to the land, and archaeological revelations beneath the city. Together, they form a pattern, a stirring, a foreshadowing of something greater on the horizon. And this is where the picture becomes sobering. None of these signs alone could shake the world. A placard can be ignored, a single prayer dismissed, an artifact shelved in a museum. But woven together, they tell a story in which the Jewish people are not retreating from the temple dream but pressing toward it with new determination. Music. Here lies the critical truth. Consciousness has shifted. For centuries, even the most devout Jews prayed for the temple with little expectation of seeing it in their lifetime. Today, that expectation has changed. Many believe it could return in their generation. Religious leaders speak of it openly. Political figures defend it boldly. Institutions prepare for it practically. And the signs on Jerusalem's streets make it visible for all to see. This shift may be the most prophetic sign of all, because prophecy never describes the temple as a fantasy. It describes a world forced to reckon with it, to resist it, to respond to it. And today, Jerusalem is moving unmistakably into that very condition. Taken together, these signs create an undeniable sense of inevitability. The question is no longer whether the temple is remembered. The question is whether the stage is nearly set for its return. And if that is true, then prophecy is not waiting for another century. It may be knocking at the door of our own generation. If the signs and prayers reveal a growing desire, the preparations prove it is more than a dream. In the very heart of Jerusalem stands an institution with one singular mission: the Temple Institute. Founded in 1987, this organization has devoted decades to one goal: restoring the vessels, garments, and rituals of the temple, so that the moment construction begins, worship can resume without delay. This is no symbolic effort. Nearly every sacred object described in the Torah has been recreated with painstaking care. The golden menorah, built precisely to biblical specifications, gleams with 7 pure gold branches. The table of showbread, the altar of incense, the silver trumpets, all are complete. Even the high priest's garments, woven in blue, purple, and scarlet thread, and crowned with the golden plate inscribed "Holy to the Lord," stand ready for use. Priests are being trained. Genealogical records have identified descendants of Aaron's priestly line. Some have already rehearsed the ancient sacrifices, not in theory but in practice, lifting knives, pouring wine offerings, and preparing lambs as commanded. These are no longer distant ideas confined to sacred texts. They are living rituals revived for the day of restoration. And perhaps the most striking preparation of all is one that has captured headlines around the world. The search for the red heifer is one of the most remarkable and prophetic stories unfolding today. According to the Torah in Numbers 19, a flawless red heifer is required for the purification of priestly service, an animal without blemish, without even a single non-red hair. For centuries, such a creature seemed impossible to find. But in recent years, cattle breeders, including partnerships with ranchers in the United States, have identified candidates. And now in Israel, a red heifer has been raised under extraordinary care. If it reaches maturity without blemish, it could enable the purification rites necessary for temple worship to begin once more. For those watching prophecy, this possibility is electrifying. The red heifer is not just an agricultural rarity, it is a prophetic key. Without it, temple service cannot be made ritually pure. With it, the final barrier is removed. The message could not be clearer. The infrastructure for the temple is not waiting to be created. It is already in place. The sacred vessels are completed and stored. Priests are trained and ready. Ritual requirements are being met. The only missing piece is permission, the political green light to build. This leads to a sobering realization. While global leaders debate peace plans, borders, and treaties, beneath the surface, another reality is quietly unfolding. A people are already prepared, waiting for the exact moment to act. The third temple is no longer just an abstract hope. It is, in practical terms, a single decision away from becoming a physical reality. And this is precisely where prophecy and politics collide. The Temple Institute has declared boldly, "We are ready." But the pressing question is this: when the opportunity comes, will the world allow it? Or will the attempt ignite a storm unlike anything seen before? Because if the Temple Institute has proven anything, it is this: the preparations are complete. The vessels stand ready. The priests are trained. The red heifer is waiting. And all that remains is the moment when history collides with prophecy, and the foundation stone of the third temple is finally laid. By now, the picture is clear. The vessels are ready. The priests are trained. Even the red heifer waits. Yet one question looms larger than all the rest. How will it actually happen? For all the prayers and signs, the temple does not yet stand. The dome of the rock still dominates the mount. Political forces still hold the site in a fragile balance. So if a third temple is to rise, what possible path could bring it into reality? Prophecy and history point to at least 3 potential scenarios, each startling in its own way. Scenario 1. Successful construction against all odds. This is the boldest and most defiant path. In this view, the Jewish people press forward with construction despite the opposition. Perhaps political winds shift dramatically, or a sudden crisis alters the balance of power. Perhaps international pressure weakens, and Israel asserts full sovereignty over the Temple Mount with unwavering determination. In such a case, the temple could be built in open defiance of global resistance. But what would follow? Almost certainly conflict. The Islamic world reveres the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock as sacred. The thought of a Jewish temple replacing or even rivaling those shrines is intolerable to many. Such a move would ignite protests, violence, and possibly even full-scale war. Nations would not stand idly by, and once again, Jerusalem would become, as Zechariah warned, a heavy stone, immovable, and crushing to all who attempt to lift it. Yet history teaches a sobering lesson. What once seemed impossible has time and again been accomplished through persistence and determination. The rebirth of Israel in 1948 was once thought impossible, yet it happened. Jerusalem's reunification in 1967 was considered unlikely, yet it was achieved. Could the rebuilding of the temple follow the same pattern? An unthinkable dream suddenly made real? If so, prophecy warns it would mark a global turning point. Sacrifices would resume, pilgrims would gather, and tensions would rise like never before. Scenario 2, a political covenant. Another path may come not through defiance but negotiation. Daniel speaks of a covenant with many for a set time, interpreted by some as a peace treaty that permits temple worship. Imagine mediators brokering a deal. Muslims retain the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa, while Israel builds the third temple nearby. To the world, it looks like tolerance, even a miracle of diplomacy. Yet prophecy warns of deception. Daniel 9:27 says the covenant is later broken. Revelation describes peace shattered by tribulation. Such a deal may bring calm for a season, but only as a prelude to deeper conflict. Scenario 3, the rise of the Antichrist. The most chilling vision sees the temple not as a house of God, but as a throne of deception. Paul warns in 2 Thessalonians 2 that the man of lawlessness will seat himself in God's temple, declaring he is God. Revelation echoes this, describing a beast demanding worship from the nations. Sacrifices may begin briefly but are cut short when the Antichrist exalts himself there. Jesus called it the abomination of desolation, a signal of great tribulation. In this view, the temple's return is both a prophetic sign and a sobering warning, the stage not just for worship, but for the greatest counterfeit in human history. The third temple will not only be a place of worship, but a battleground of truth and deception. Prophecy warns the Antichrist will rise there, yet also promises his defeat when Christ returns. Three paths converge on the same outcome, the temple restored. Whether through bold defiance, fragile peace, or deception, Jerusalem again becomes the world's center. For Jews, it is redemption. For Christians, both confirmation and warning. For all, it is a call to vigilance. This is more than stone and gold. It is destiny. The vessels are ready, the priests are trained, the red heifer waits. Politics shift, prophecy unfolds. The question is no longer if the temple will rise, but when. And with it comes a choice, faith, compromise, or rebellion. The signs are before us. The story is no longer ancient, it is alive. And the call is clear. Wake up, for the one who is coming is near.